Welcome.
So here's a wild thought. What if we could actually see faith inside the brain? I mean, really map it out. That feeling of transcendence, of prayer, that connection to something bigger. What if we could see that as just a pattern of neurons firing? It's a pretty provocative question, right? So let's just dive right in.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this in 5 parts. We'll kick things off with some really big, ambitious ideas. Then we're going to zoom way, way in. I mean, down to one single critical moment in a training room. And from there, we'll pull back out and try to figure out what it all means.
Okay, first up, we're stepping into a world where two of humanity's oldest pursuits kind of collide. We're talking about the scientific quest for knowledge and the spiritual quest for meaning.
So this field has a name. It's called neurotheology. And one of its leading proponents, a guy named Andrew Newberg, defines it pretty simply. He just says it's the link between the study of the brain and the study of religion. But trust me, that very simple definition is hiding a huge ambition.
Yeah, this isn't just about, finding a little common ground. The vision here is absolutely staggering. Newberg's talking about creating what he calls a mega-theology. The goal? To build a single universal framework for all belief. And it's rooted in 2 things he says we all share. That capacity for spiritual experience and the brain biology that, makes it all possible.
But look, when you have an idea this big, you're going to get some pushback, right? It's bound to have critics. So let's get into the main debate here, because it really shapes this entire conversation.
So on one hand, you've got Newberg's really optimistic vision, right? This beautiful integration of science and religion. But on the other hand, you've got some sharp criticism from scholars like Nathaniel F. Barrett. And his big worry is that the whole field is making a fundamental mistake. It's just confusing a brain scan with an actual belief. It's looking at brain activity and saying, that's it, when the reality of human thought is so much richer.
And this quote really just hits the nail on the head. Barrett's basically saying that when you focus so intensely on the brain, you get this kind of tunnel vision. You risk completely ignoring everything else that makes up a person's spiritual life. We're talking culture, community, their history, everything. So the real question becomes, is the brain the whole story? Or is it just one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle?
Okay, so we've got this really interesting high-level academic debate going on. But what happens when this stuff leaves the ivory tower and gets out into the real world? I mean, how do you actually do this kind of work, especially when it's so incredibly sensitive? Well, to figure that out, we're going to zoom in on one specific place. It's called Restoring Hope Ministries. And we're going to look at their training program for something called neurofeedback, which is a technique where basically people can learn to regulate their own brainwaves. And what you find here is it's such a powerful contrast to all that abstract debate. At Restoring Hope, their whole philosophy is built on this idea that before you even think about linking brain science and faith, you have to build this bedrock foundation of just meticulous care, strict ethics, and really, really rigorous training.
I mean, just look at this. This isn't some fuzzy philosophical idea. This is grounded, clinical work. They're using standard medical screeners to track real-world issues, things like anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So here's the key takeaway. Progress isn't measured by a cool-looking brain scan. It's measured against actual, tangible human concerns.
All right, let's zoom in even more. Let's get right down to the nitty-gritty, the actual syllabus, the training plan that takes someone from a total beginner to a qualified practitioner. This is their journey, step by step.
And wow, is it a deliberate journey? Students do not just jump into the deep end here. It's more like climbing a ladder. First, they just observe. Then they move on to simulations. Then, eventually, they get to assist in real sessions. And all of it is under constant, direct supervision. Every single step is designed to build their skills while making sure everyone is safe.
You can see the whole curriculum is built around this foundations-first idea. For 10 full weeks, students are just completely immersed in theory, in ethics, in safety rules, and in mock practice sessions. All of that happens before they ever do a single thing with an actual client.
And that brings us to the climax of this whole journey, the real turning point, week 11. After all those weeks of prep, this is it. This is the moment theory finally becomes practice. For the very first time, a student gets to move from the classroom to the clinic, allowed to perform very limited hands-on tasks with a supervisor watching their every move. So what does hands-on actually mean at this stage? Well, it's definitely not about taking charge. It's about things like helping place a sensor or preparing materials. It's about knowing the tech, for sure, but the most important job, just carefully watching the client. The main skills they're learning are how to spot any potential bad reactions and knowing exactly when to call in their supervisor. It's really a masterclass in humility and just being vigilant.
Okay, so let's pull the camera back out now. We've seen the giant, grand theory, and we've seen this incredibly detailed, careful practice on the ground. So, how do these two things actually connect?
Well, here's what's so interesting. That training model from Restoring Hope Ministries, with its obsessive focus on safety, on ethics, on what you can actually see, it's kind of a powerful real-world answer to those academic critiques we talked about earlier. It's like it's saying, hey, you want to avoid getting lost in the brain? The solution is to be relentlessly focused on the person. And honestly, this one line from their syllabus just sums it all up perfectly. The point isn't to crank out a bunch of tech enthusiasts who are just jazzed about the equipment. No, the goal is to form thoughtful, careful, and teachable practitioners, people who understand the limits of their tools and the real gravity of the work they're doing.
Which really leaves us with one last big question to think about, doesn't it? When you're in a field like this, one that tries to connect our inner life with our biology, maybe the most important part of the training has nothing to do with the tech at all. Maybe it's all about what we're teaching people to see, what we're teaching them to value, and ultimately what we're teaching them to protect in the human being sitting right across from them.